Hi, everybody. Please excuse, I'm still getting over a bit of a cold, so if you'll excuse the quality of my voice. Hi. Today, I want to talk about burnout, and I want to talk about burnout that is specific to the sex industry, because for a number of reasons, we are special. I want to lay out three things ahead of time, and this is covers the entire presentation. The first thing is that I want to acknowledge there is a difference between voluntary, involuntary, and survival sex work. This presentation is geared specifically for voluntary participants in sex work. I also want to acknowledge that whether we like it or not, there is a hierarchy that we tend to ascribe to, from dancers and escorts and cam girls. And for the purpose of this presentation, none of that matters. Sex workers are sex workers here. And the burnout that I want to talk about is specific to that general category. Third thing I want to do is I want to acknowledge the impact of criminalization, moral judgment. We have no social supports. We have Woodhull Foundation, we have Pineapple, but we do not have social supports the way that civilians have social supports. And that forces us a lot of times into isolation in a number of ways. For those of us who work in sex work in an illegal or not legalized profession, for us, we don't have the legal recourse that civilians have, and that too can isolate us. And then I think we have to acknowledge FOSTA SESTA because of the implications of those rulings. But we also want to acknowledge the importance of this administration. We are living in dangerous times, and the impact of that can create further frustration, isolation, desperation, and those things can all impact us as sex workers. So let me tell you why I get to be here. I get to be here because in 1997, my best friend, who was an agency escort, said to me, if you ever want to try this, I think you'd be good at it. And so I tried it, and I went on a double with her. And all I remember about it is walking away, counting my money and laughing. So I was hooked, and eventually got my own space. I ended up working for 10 years as an independent escort in call. For the last 2 years of that, I was burned out, and it felt like it hit very suddenly, and it held on strong all the way through those last 2 years. Some ways that I noticed that I was burnt out was I was resenting going to work, so much so that I was always late. I watched the clock constantly, and I started to hate my clients. And I was told that I had to be careful how long I hated my clients, because it wouldn't be long before I hated myself. And that is what started to happen for me. So now I want to talk about recognizing some of the symptoms of burnout. Ideally, we would be in a format where you and I could all discuss in a round, because I want to get your ideas, what you've noticed about your own symptoms of burnout. To start with, let me go through something of a list to help edify the subject. One symptom of burnout is constant chronic exhaustion, not just at work, but in life in general. When you're running sluggish, maybe even starting to get depressed, that is one sign. Another is diminished creativity, when you stop doing the things that you love to do, usually in terms of art, dance, same thing. When you start really pulling back on those things, that's another possible sign. There's also black and white thinking, us or them thinking, sex workers versus clients, management versus dancers. That kind of black and white thinking is just, it's another little red flag. There is always an inability to listen. And that's actually a sign of burnout when we're working as escorts, as dancers, as cam girls, any number of ways in which we do sex work. When we are unable to hear what our client has to say, even if we don't want to hear it. But the point is that we start to dissociate or depersonalize so that we're not even there participating in engagement with them. Another way is feeling isolated. That's a really important one because we start out the gate isolated in so many ways. So if you're feeling like you're alone and nobody gets it, it's another red flag. If you are feeling angry and critical and cynical and sarcastic, and I say that as a diehard sarcasm fiend, still watch out for those things. If you are always angry, always cynical, sarcasm flying left and right, if those things are all happening unchecked and you notice them, that's another red flag. There's the inability to empathize, a kind of numbing where, for example, maybe I'm going on a double and my friend cancels at the last minute because, I don't know, her kid is sick or something like that. My inability to empathize with that might be a sign that I'm getting burned out. Let's be clear that I can feel angry, I can feel disappointed, and still empathize. It's possible. If we're not doing that, then it's a sign. Another is hoping that your clients don't show and then resenting them when they don't. I'll leave that one as it is. And finally, I've noticed a lack or lowering of sex drive in your personal life. If you start to notice that as a consistent theme, this could be a sign of burnout. So that's my list. Does anybody want to throw in something that they've noticed or want to chime in on something that I mentioned?
Um,
Okay.
I would
Yes.
I would say anxiety. Maybe that's a personal one, but I noticed when I was living in a state that I didn't feel welcome in, I had constant anxiety or panic attacks.
That's a great one. Thank you for throwing that one in. I don't know how I missed it. It is. Especially anxiety while working can be a big red flag. Anybody else? Inability to connect with our own desires and communicate them. Ooh, okay. Say more about the context. Are we talking about in our personal lives, in work life, both? Both. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I think it's a part of numbing out when we disconnect from ourselves and from our desires, and we go into a kind of automated response, either at work or in our personal lives. That's a great one. Oh, yeah, feeling greatly overwhelmed, indeed. I think, especially if you put more than one of these together with another one, we end up with overwhelmed like maybe I don't know what to do first. I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know which bill to pay now. I don't. Could you say more, DeMarco, about feeling greatly overwhelmed? Just going to pause for this. It's important. Also feeling confused by our own feelings and emotions. That's good. Yes. Yes. When we have it, especially when we have our hard time identifying our emotions, let alone managing them, experiencing them. That's the thing about feelings is that feeling is an active, it's a verb. because feelings are meant to be felt, and then we move on. Emotion is motion. Yeah. Losing feeling of motivation and keeping up. That's in reference to overwhelmed. Okay, thanks, DeMarco. Yeah, keeping up, that kind of I don't wanna, that comes from really a kind of a somatic place from deep inside of us that I just don't wanna, can be the core of the overwhelm, feeling overwhelmed. Anybody else want to throw in?
Yeah, I just wanted to shout out what was mentioned earlier about the anxiety. I put in the chat too, that it led me before to not returning my clients' communications in a timely manner. Like that whole like having anxiety of like, oh, are they gonna actually show up? And then being mad when they don't. So it was like this push and pull. I'm really glad you named that. Like I felt so called out for that. Like yeah, that push and pull of like, when rent is come due, you need to, like keep working, but also that back and forth. And then it changing minute to minute, like the back and forth of like hoping that they would come because you actually do like that client, but then being frustrated because you really needed time for yourself and you knew you weren't taking that time. So like I don't know if other people felt that way, but like the movement of back and forth of like feeling frustrated and then it just like changing so much because it's like not taking care of yourself first.
Yeah. Right, right. I can identify with that. Thanks for chiming in. Let's move on to preventing these symptoms, right? So we've got a pretty good grasp on red flags, and one or two red flags doesn't necessarily mean burnout, but these are things to look for, and the number of red flags you need to identify as burned out is going to depend on the person. So how do we recognize them? The first tool I have for you is to refer to this list that we've come up with. The second is to use mindfulness, which is really just about being present with your body and its environment to notice how you are being affected by what's happening in your environment. Paying attention to, that didn't feel good. Wait, I thought I said no. Or, no, you know what? My body is saying, I can't work today. I'm not going to work today. Paying attention to what our bodies need, not just our heads or our pockets. Also, another great way to subvert burnout is a plan B. Plan B is what you do if plan A is just not going to cut it anymore. What's important about plan B is that it be something that you can do tomorrow. You have the access, you have the wherewithal, you have the credentials, whatever it is that you could do tomorrow if you didn't do sex work today. So let's say if plan A is sex work, when plan A was sex work for me, my plan B was to give talks not unlike this, to go around the country and speak to other sex workers about how to use the emotional tools to stay in their business longer. When it came time for plan B, when I reached that 10 years and said, I give up, I can't do it anymore, I started that while I went to grad school and got my degree to become a psychotherapist. Now, as a psychotherapist, my plan B is to teach. And that's my plan B because I have the credentials to do it. I have access to colleges in the area where I could do that, and I have the contacts. So what you want to think about for a plan B, I've got a pretty ideal plan B. And for some of us, the closest plan B that we can come up with is to babysit in the neighborhood or to walk dogs. And those are fantastic things, and they might not be what you really want to do. But it's important to have a plan B for one specific reason. It means that if you choose plan A, it's a choice because you could choose plan B. And it's in choosing that you have power. I am actively choosing to do plan A. I don't have to like it. I don't want to do it, but I am choosing it. There's my power. If I choose plan B, then there is my power. And either way, I am controlling what's happening in the next step of my life. Anybody else have a good plan B? Anybody? A go bag. Yes. Amen. Okay. If anybody else wants to chime in now or later, you're welcome to do so. Oh, educate, share others, your lived experience. Yes. It's really an important thing. I wish I had had somebody. I mean, I had my best friend. She was my guru. It would have been great to have classes like Woodhull is offering. Anybody else? Okay. All right. The next thing I have for preventing symptoms is values. And that's based on the existential psychology idea that I suffer when I don't live according to my values. Suffering comes from ignoring, if say, let's say one of my values is generosity, and suffering comes when I refuse to help someone I love when I can, and I want to, but refusing to. There's all kinds of qualifications that we can list for any of these, but the reason that I had Woodhull send out, or Spokes Hub send out this, the value sheet, is a way for you to try. There's an exercise that helps you get down to what your core values really are. They start with, it's on the screen, you'll see it, and it should have been sent out to you. The exercise is to look at the list and go through and circle every single one that matters to you. And if you're doing it right, you should be circling a lot. Okay. Once you've done that, you'll go back and eliminate all but 10, which is usually a really big challenge. One of the ways you can do it is to kind of combine values into one, or absorb one into another. Can everyone see the value sheet? It says, yes, okay. So you get down to those 10, and then it gets harder because I have you bring it down to 5. And it's important that you do this exercise in this order because it helps you weed out and weed down to what it is that really matters. After 5, you come down to 3. Those 3 become your guideposts. They become an outline for the choices that you make. I don't want to go to work today. Well, here are my values. Is the choice that I'm making in line with that? So, for example, one of my values might be generosity, and the choice that I'm making is to not go to work. I believe that that meets my value of generosity because I'm being generous to myself. It's so important that we include ourselves in the choices that we make based on these values that we come down to. If you ever feel like the values that you've chosen aren't quite key for you anymore, do the exercise again. I wish we had time to do it here, but I know it takes a while. It's not easy. Okay. The last thing that I'm going to present for preventing any of these symptoms of burnout is a grounding exercise that you can do anywhere, anytime, even in the midst of work, or while you're at a stoplight, or when you're in your home. The idea is that you make sure you notice your feet on the ground of anything, the floor of anything. And if you can, close your eyes if it's safe. And if not, don't. And you say to yourself your version of this. My name is Kristen Appick. Today is Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. The time is 12:30 Pacific. I am sitting in my office at 4023 37th Avenue South in Seattle, Washington. I'm 55 years old, and nothing bad is happening to me at this time. Being present is the place from which we can be mindful, because the only thing that is happening right now is right now. Coming from this place, it's easier for us to make decisions about what happens next and how present we want to be and the outcomes we want to see and how do we get there according to our values, etc., etc. Okay. So that's my list for how to avoid burnout. Does anybody have any other suggestions? Okay.
Something that helped me was I really needed to start moving again, like physically moving. I started putting on music and just started moving in my house. And that was a very small thing that, like, movement and music and dancing always shifted my energy and made me personally feel more connected to myself, and like it made me feel my body and grounded. So that was just personally something that helped me feel more connected to myself, and it changed my physiology with like getting the, you know, the good endorphins going, and it just, yeah, that's helped
That's
me.
beautiful. Yes, thank you. Actually, I have some clients who feel the same way, that seems to break them out of the darkness of burnout. Anybody else?
Yes. So for me, what is really, really big that you broke it down for us, the way to prevent burnout is getting clear with the values. So when I understood what it is to align to my own values, and that included a lot of the relationships that I had, that helped me, prevent burnout. So what that meant was getting clear on what kind of people I wanted to be around, what kind of institutions I wanted to have relationships with, and when I was clear that they're life affirming and that I'm accepted as I am, then that helps me prevent burnout and be in alignment with my own values.
Fabulous. That's exactly what we're talking about. Yes. Anybody else want to chime or type in? Okay. Feel free. I'll move on to addressing burnout. Again, I want to reiterate the importance of a lack of social support and built-in resources for us. We have so very few, and which makes it even more important in terms of addressing burnout, to create community. And that looks however it looks for you. Oh, hold on. Let's see. Sierra is commenting about meeting my burnout red flags with a sense of acceptance or allowing. Connecting with nature or something beautiful and bigger than me. Movement, art, gardening, gatherings. Yes. Beautiful. Yes. I especially like the idea of connecting with something bigger than me, than you. There is an element of spirituality that we don't always label as spiritual, but I think that's it. That idea that there is something bigger than we are, and whatever you choose to call it. It looks like Sierra calls it movement, art, gardening, and gatherings. Okay. Okay, so right, no social support, create community. Next is another element of existential psychology where we talk about life has no meaning except the meaning that we give it. So addressing burnout can look like, what is the meaning that I give to my work? It can be to make money, okay? Maybe it's to feel good about my body. Maybe it's to share comfort. These are just off the top of my head. Those become the meaning that I give to my work. And so when I go to work, I can consider that's what I am going for. This is everything else is about serving that. And if I can serve that, then I'm choosing what I'm doing with my energy, what I'm doing with my body, and that's where the power lies. It's also important to consider your boundaries. And I want to emphasize that there is a difference between boundaries and limits. Boundaries are what we set for what I will allow in my space, and that can vary depending on who is coming into our space. Limits are the fences that we set, the walls that we set, that this will not happen, and those don't change person to person. So where I might have one boundary that changes for this client or that, one wall limit that I had was nothing without condoms. And that was for me. So take a look at what your boundaries are, what are your limits, and make sure you can differentiate between them. And then there's self-care, which means bubble baths and chocolate and whatever. It means those things, it does. But it also means things like taking personal control. And what that means to me is saying no when I want to say no. One thing my best friend taught me from the very beginning was that the phone will always ring again. And so saying no to this client might mean making way for the next client that I really do want to see. Self-care can look like seeking support, either from friends or community or therapy, ways that you can talk freely about your work and get support and understanding. Another way is Plan B. Consider it. Addressing burnout can just look like considering Plan B and then choosing Plan A. You can take practical steps like shifting your money perspective from short-term to long-term. You might try changing environmental factors, right? Move your space, get a different photographer, try a different angle. There's always exercise, food, and sleep. And one of my favorites is set aside the idea that you have to do your life perfectly yourself the first time. Not possible, for one, so you set yourself up for burnout in that perspective. But there's also a playfulness that we lose when we live by and die by the idea of perfection. Remember that playfulness is supposed to be a part of sexuality, at least when it's voluntary. Right? And my final tip is get a pet. Have a pet. Oh, look at that. Just in time. This is Frank. Pet your pet. Spend time with your pet. If you don't have a pet and you can't have a pet, go see your best friend's pet. Spend time around animals, touching them if you can. It releases oxytocin in your brain and in your pet. It's also really good for them, which is soothing and helps us feel more grounded. So those are my tips for addressing burnout. Does anybody have any they'd like to suggest?
Yeah, I'd like to share here. I think it's important to begin to unpack how systems, allow for this, the feeling of burnout. And, like when we start understanding the external forces to the current situation, it kind of alleviates and the feelings of taking all responsibility for how we feel. This is what it has done for me. So it's a good exercise, right? Like to get somebody who can have altitude to what's happening, to how the systems are working against us, against our profession, and just gain a new perspective. And I think it goes aligned with what you said to us in accepting the meaning that we give to our current situation. So I think it helps us in having a new way of looking at things.
I like that. Could you say more about the systems that we're talking about?
Sure. I mean, you mentioned one, the hierarchy or hierarchy, and that is very, uh, it goes together with patriarchy. And so understanding a little bit more how those systems that we are all born into affect us on the daily, it kind of helps us sort of externalize our feelings, and not be left with like guilt and isolation because we don't have anybody else to talk to about our current situation.
Yes.
So yeah, I have done this with the help of therapy, and it has been very helpful in getting a new perspective.
This is great. Okay. Yes, I see what you're saying. And we can take it can go from the very personal to the global, right? I mean, the amount of misogyny that has been building in this country over the years, and now it's just out in full force for everybody to see, and nobody's apologizing. And that is a system that we are trying to work under because that system is affecting our clients, and our clients are affecting us and our business. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. This is exactly what I was trying to say, and with the help of a therapist is when I was able to understand, okay, there are systems at play here that are bigger, and they're working as they're designed to
Yes.
work. And
Yes.
so our job is to unpack it and to orient to this new way of being, right? Like we have community where we can speak freely and and gain a new position for life, a new perspective.
And maybe even by talking with our community, talking with our therapists, we can even find ways to subvert the paradigm.
Yeah, yeah. The resistance, right? Is that
No
what you're saying?
resistance, yes.
Mm-hmm. Find resiliency in the resistance. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, at this point, I've presented my information and you have the values worksheet. If you want to print that out and try the exercise, I encourage it. If you're having trouble printing it out, you can email me at info@kristennapick.com. And I believe you can get the spelling of my name from the workshop.